The world produces over 400 million tons of plastic every year, and that figure keeps rising. As you watch this video, more plastic is being produced. Look, a fresh toothbrush just came off the conveyor. And over there, someone just threw a plastic bag into the sea. It's expected that both plastic production and, as a result, the amount of trash could triple by 2060. At the same time, a significant portion of plastic ends up in the ocean and spreads everywhere. No marine environment has been left untouched. Plastic waste has been found in surface waters, mid-water layers, sediments, on beaches, and from Arctic latitudes to the tropics. The good news is that people have already made attempts to clean up the ocean, but so far they haven't been successful. There's still just too much plastic waste in it. And it seems the ocean got tired of waiting for us to do something. Now it decided to save itself by literally eating the plastic floating in the water. Think it's a joke? You'd be surprised to know how shocked scientists were when they found this out. I mean, you expect to meet a shark, a jellyfish, a sea lion, or a turtle in the water. But something like this? Just a sec, I'll make some coffee. Here's an unobtrusive reminder to do something under the video if you forget it, and thanks to those who understand my wish to stay anonymous. Yeah, I've been saying this a lot lately, but new people keep coming in. Plus, you can always skip ahead. All right, let's get started. Every year, about 12 million tons of plastic end up in the oceans, yet sampling surveys detect only about 1% of that amount. For a long time, scientists couldn't figure out why, since there wasn't any reasonable or clear explanation for it. I mean, everyone gets how much plastic pollution hurts nature and literally everyone on the planet. In the oceans, there are huge garbage patches made of plastic waste, larger than continents. About 10% of the world's plastic trash ends up in the sea and ends up in the central areas, where slow circular currents gather the waste into one big, constantly moving mass. It slowly breaks down into plastic dust that marine creatures mistake for food. Small fish eat tiny pieces of plastic as if they were regular plankton. Then these fish are eaten by bigger species, and plastic pollution moves up the food chain, eventually reaching humans. In miniature scale, microplastic and nanoplastic particles have been found in fruits and veggies, getting into them through the plant roots. They've been discovered in almost every human organ. Some even pass from mother to baby through breast milk. In addition to this, over 1 million seabirds and more than 100,000 marine mammals die each year from swallowing plastic waste, not to mention turtles and jellyfish. However, over the last 22 years, pollution hasn't really gone up, even though people have been producing and tossing out a lot more plastic. It just didn't make any sense until scientists suggested that the ocean started dealing with the plastic on its own. Well, not exactly on its own, thanks to microorganisms. Most likely, the reason plastic pollution levels have hardly changed is because of the bacteria that eat plastic. Scientists have come across this before at landfills as far back as 2001. A team of Japanese researchers made this amazing discovery. They figured out that in a typical landfill, in trenches packed with muck and waste, there's a sort of slimy layer of bacteria that joyfully chomps on plastic bottles, toys, and all sorts of garbage. By digesting the trash, these bacteria scoop up carbon from the plastic to generate energy, which they use for growing, moving, and dividing. This discovery was revolutionary. But back in 2001, 3 years before the term microplastics even became a thing, plastic pollution hardly caught anyone's serious attention. But more than 20 years later, it became just impossible to ignore him. People finally got interested in the discovery of the Japanese scientists when suddenly something new, even more surprising, came along. Researchers headed to hot spots of plastic pollution in the northern part of the Pacific Ocean to find microbes that break down plastic. They collected plastic waste and unexpectedly isolated a marine fungus called Parangiodontium album, growing it on specialized plastic. The plastic contained labeled carbon. Using the labeled isotopes of this carbon, the team could track what was happening. They realized that the fungus breaks down polyethylene at a rate of about 0.05% a day. So it's a super slow process. You can't just throw a plastic bottle in with some fungi and expect to see it nibbled on the next day. But scientists can't afford to wait years to figure things out either. So the simplest way to see if plastic is decomposing is to weigh the plastic stuff periodically and check the results. Scientists tested polyethylene and polystyrene, the most popular types of plastic on the planet, by feeding them to marine microbes. As a result, after 5 months, the weight of the polyethylene dropped by 7%, while the polystyrene lost 11%. Not much, of course, but at least it's all natural. Just recently, researchers in Germany found a kind of fungus that can break down synthetic plastic. A group of experts from the Institute of Freshwater Ecology and Inland Fisheries discovered that certain microfungi can live only on plastics, breaking it down into simpler compounds in the process. These microfungi live in Lake Stecklin in northeastern Germany and can even reproduce on synthetic polymers without any other carbon sources. They're doing just fine. This ability to use plastic as their sole food source lets Stecklin fungi break down plastic more efficiently than other organisms that might need extra nutrients or carbon sources. They especially love polyurethane, a common material used in construction foam and other products. Polyethylene and microplastics aren't their favorites. Our ocean fungus, Parangyioidontium album, has a bit of a different diet, and honestly, we don't know a whole lot about it. Marine fungi, as opposed to terrestrial ones, haven't been studied as much, so their role and metabolic potential in the ocean aren't completely clear either. Still, fungi in general have the ability to decompose a wide range of compounds, including complex hydrocarbons like lignin and cellulose, contaminants like dichloro, diphenyl, trichloroethane, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, or even trinitrotoluene, plus other substances harmful for the environment. Fungi can be called masters of degradation, in a good way of course, since they use a bunch of digestive enzymes, which makes them potential candidates for breaking down plastic. As you probably guessed, besides fungi, there are all kinds of microbes that eat plastic, but it seems like fungi do a better job at it. This is what a red plastic particle looks like, caught by the sea fungus Parangyioidontium album, and the fungus is clearly interested in what it's doing. But the important thing, of course, is its ability to break down polyethylene particles, which is the most common type of plastic you can find in the ocean. No, wait, there's something else just as important and very significant. Scientists think there are other unknown marine fungi that break down different types of plastic, sinking into deeper layers of the ocean. Unlike our Parangyioidontium album, they might not need light, so the ocean cleanup is happening at all levels. We just don't know about it yet. In the wild, fungi play a crucial role in breaking down organic matter and moving it through the carbon cycle. Over millions of years, they've developed the ability to break down many complex natural polymers like cellulose. In fact, the enzymes produced by fungi are incredibly effective at breaking down complex organic compounds, including carbohydrates and proteins. So fungi just act like fungi. Well, almost. Fungi's ability to break down plastic might have developed in response to the overwhelming presence of synthetic material in their environment. In other words, they weren't naturally capable of this, but modern times forced them to adapt. Some scientists actually believe that we're not dealing with the discovery of organisms that eat plastic, but directly with their emergence. Then it's an evolution that's happening right before our eyes. In other words, humans have changed the habitats of bacteria and fungi pretty quickly by flooding them with plastic waste. There's so much of it now that it's taken just a few decades for organisms to evolve that see plastic not as a problem, but as a favorite meal in a cozy home. But there's another reason why the ocean might have started absorbing plastic. Well, it's not exactly reason, it's really just a fact. The whole idea of living organisms absorbing plastic isn't that crazy. Yes, plastic is a synthetic material, but it's made from stuff found in nature, like oil, gas, and coal. There's even plastic that's made from renewable resources, which are natural materials that can be replenished from generation to generation. These include things like carbohydrates, starch, vegetable fats, and oils. Some time ago, we posted a video on our channel about bacteria in the ocean that feed on oil. And these bacteria showed up there a long time ago, way before people started extracting oil and using its products. However, for the ocean to eat the plastic that ended up in it, certain conditions have to be met. At the very least, that plastic needs to be treated with UV light, meaning it has to get some sunlight. But that doesn't mean only the plastic trash on the surface can break down. It's not just there, it's everywhere. I've mentioned this already, but so far, no mushrooms have been found that can break down our trash in complete darkness, so we can't say the ocean will handle plastic on its own. This rule also applies to microbes. That's because due to the sun, plastic undergoes chemical changes, becoming more brittle, and it's just easier to eat, but it's still really slow. The biograduation rate of UV-treated polyethylene is 0.044% per day. This means that a piece of plastic can be completely broken down by fungus in 2,000 days, or about 5.5 years. It might seem like a long time, but don't forget that plastic is originally designed to be as durable as possible, exactly to withstand degradation. And the fact that it actually happens is already a huge win. Most common plastics break down really slowly, sometimes to the point where they're considered non-biodegradable. They're made like that for maximum durability. Wait, I've already said this. Every toothbrush, drinking straw, food container, and pen you've ever used is still out there on this planet, either in its original form, recycled into something else, or slowly breaking down into microplastics. And we really don't know exactly how long plastic can hang around. On average, it can take anywhere from 20 to 500 years to decompose, depending on the material and structure. For example, single-use grocery bags break down in about 2 decades. In comparison, toothbrushes take 500 years, while fishing line needs at least 600. And if you compare the activity of fungi to these numbers, it really seems like they're munching through plastic at quite a fast pace, almost at a record speed. When it comes to bacteria, scientists estimate that they can break down about 1% of all the plastic out there each year, and they probably do it in the ocean. But you know what? This new way of recycling plastic seems like it might be pretty unsafe for people. The thing is, the fungus that eats plastic is found not just in the ocean, but also in cultural heritage sites, including historical buildings, museums, and caves all over the world. The risk that cultural heritage faces from fungal strains is probably clear to everyone. Fungi can cause serious damage not just to buildings, but also to their contents, like in museums or libraries, regardless of the material in question. There have even been cases where people got infected by this fungus. Especially at risk are those with weakened immune systems. And still, I'm curious, can fungi solve the world's plastic crisis? Well, I don't have good news for you. While discovering fungi that eat plastic is a step forward, it's unlikely to fix the plastic pollution problem on our planet. Experts say that the best way to fight plastic pollution is to cut down on the amount of material that ends up in the environment. The activity of fungi enzymes responsible for breaking down plastic greatly depends on external factors like temperature and nutrient availability. This means that recycling plastic with fungi is more suited for a controlled environment like treatment plants. Achieving the ideal conditions in the wild is almost impossible. Everything is constantly changing out there. However, fungi can be helpful in places where traditional processing methods aren't as effective, sort of like a support tool. An international team of scientists counted a total of 184 fungal and 55 bacterial strains that can break down polycaprolactone, a biodegradable polyester often used to make various polyurethanes. So basically, we've got options, and that's just the organisms that exist on Earth today, the ones we know of. In 1,000 years, a lot will change on this planet, and there will definitely be organisms that can eat up any plastic, doing it way faster than today. Maybe we'll even be able to feed them whole bottles. The thing is, we don't have that much time to wait for nature to fix what we've messed up. We need to take action using the knowledge and methods we already have. Maybe we should speed up and even guide the evolution of organisms so they can help us out. But we can't make them do all the work. Even though mushrooms have an incredible potential in this area, that's tough to compare with anything else. It was found out not long ago that they can successfully absorb oils and metals, not just plastic. But their main advantage is that they can recycle plastic that's tricky for people to handle. I'm talking about polypropylene. For a long time, it was basically a mystery when it came to recycling, even though it's the most typical plastic. I mean, it's used to make all sorts of stuff, from packaging and toys to furniture and clothing. Polypropylene makes up about 28% of all plastic waste in the world, but only 1% of it gets recycled. But fungi can handle it, specifically 2 types, Aspergillus terreus and Engiodontium album, usually found in soil and plants. They can reduce the amount of polypropylene by 21% after 30 days of incubation and by 25 to 27% after 90 days. I'd even say that mushrooms do a better job than humans. Now imagine we team up. Their skills are our controlled conditions, their appetite and our knowledge about evolution, the team that will save the planet from plastic pollution. Cleaning with fungi. You don't need me to tell you that plastic production has reached such levels that it's everywhere now. They're finding it not just in the soil and oceans, but even on top of Mount Everest and in human blood. But the biggest impact it's having is still on bodies of water. And humanity's got a solution. Yep, it's about fungi again. After all, that's what we're talking about today, isn't it? Back in 2014, a unique experiment took place in Corvallis, Oregon, aimed at cleaning up polluted streams. The Ocean Blue Project used jute bags soaked in mushroom mycelium to filter out toxins from the water. The results showed that the mycelium effectively purifies water from harmful substances, especially in slow-moving currents. It was discovered that mycelium can even remove dangerous bacteria like E. coli from the water. E. coli is a harmful bacteria that causes serious food poisoning in humans and animals and quickly becomes resistant to medication. So the fungi are basically our saviors from plastic and everything else? Well, it's too early to talk about the long-term impact because the whole cleanup project is still in the experimental phase. We need to consider how this method of cleanup affects people, animals, and the ecosystem. You can't just stick fungi somewhere and hope it won't affect the life around them. Well, you can, but whenever people do that, it always ends badly. That said, the experiment's goal is pretty inspiring to come up with a simple way to restore nature after pollution and make it available to everyone. These bags aren't expensive, but the potential benefits are huge. They can absorb oil spills and toxins, enrich the soil, and purify water, cutting down waste along the way. Overall, the plan seems like a win-win all around. That is, if they do some extra research, of course. Weird food for mushrooms. Today we talked a lot about how fungi can eat plastic and all their other surprising talents, but scientists' new proposal broadens their field of activity, menu. I'm talking about how diapers decompose, and I doubt the fungi will be happy about it. Let's start with the fact that recycling disposable diapers is simply impossible. That's because they're made up of so many different materials. Plus, the process gets trickier due to the diapers containing feces, and that's organic waste, which requires a completely different recycling approach. Disposal isn't easy either. Just think, on average, one child uses 8,000 diapers before potty training. It amounts to about 2 tons of waste. Now try to get rid of that pile. In short, it's a serious problem that environmentalists have been talking about for a long time. But recently, an unexpected solution has appeared. A Mexican researcher suggested using diapers to grow mushrooms. Not in the sense that you just throw them out and wait for some mushrooms to pop up, but during research, it turned out that mushrooms can feed on cellulose, which is found in diapers. By shredding the diapers and adding coffee grounds, the scientists created fertilizer where mushrooms thrive. Plus, the cellulose from the diapers disappeared almost completely. After a period of 2.5 to 3 months, the volume and weight of the diaper decreased by 80%. This way, by using this technology, they plan to reduce each pound of diapers to about 0.44 pounds, while also getting 0.66 pounds of edible mushrooms. Seriously, they even tasted them. And it seems no one ended up spitting them out afterwards. But overall, the project isn't designed to grow mushrooms for human consumption. Its main goal is to dispose of diapers to lessen the negative impact on the environment, and the mushrooms, they're just a nice bonus. Bacteria also help. Not too long ago, microbiologists developed a reliable way to clean up the environment from microplastic pollution, this time using bacteria. These microorganisms form colonies on surfaces, creating a sticky biofilm. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, we remove this biofilm every morning when we brush our teeth and get rid of dental plaque. A bit gross. But that's because our biofilm doesn't do anything good. However, scientists from the Hong Kong Polytechnic University plan to use this ability of bacteria to create strips that can capture microplastics in polluted waters, turning them into a clump that's easy to dispose of and recycle. So far, the experiments in the early stages, it was carried out in a lab setting, not in ocean or sewage waters, which, as you can imagine, isn't enough to draw any conclusions. Also, they used a strain of bacteria that could be dangerous for humans, and it's probably not suitable for large-scale projects. In other words, even if they manage to collect microplastics, who's going to risk people's lives and health for that? However, scientists are sure they'll find a way to use the method with natural bacteria that form biofilms in wastewater, and no one will get hurt. Mushroom coffin. I'll admit it straight away. I thought this idea was super cool. Weird as it sounds, a few years back in the Netherlands, they had the first burial using a one-of-a-kind coffin made from mycelium. This stuff, which is the underground part of fungi, speeds up composting. Essentially, they buried a person inside a huge mushroom. Standard coffins really drag out the transformation of a body into compost, which can take more than a decade. The reason for this is lacquered wood, metal components, and clothing. They all decompose at a snail's pace, despite their classy appearance. On the other hand, a coffin made of mycelium goes back to the earth in about a month and a half. Mycelium is a nature's recycler. It not only neutralizes toxins and provides fresh food for everything that grows above ground, its fibers can also be used to make anything from food to clothing and packaging, including coffins. This fungal coffin helps the body decompose faster and improves soil quality at the same time. People turn into nutrients instead of waste. Basically, it's a win-win. Bob Hendricks, who makes these coffins called Living Cocoon, even talked to a relative of the deceased to see what they think. You know, it's not every day you see a coffin made of mushrooms. Anyway, during their talk, they touched on the circle of life, which really moved everyone. It's like a person dies, but they come back as trees and plants. Isn't that a life-affirming concept? Each living cocoon takes a few weeks to form as the mycelium mat grows in the shape of a coffin, and then it's left to dry out naturally. Once it gets wet again in the soil, it comes back to life and starts the decomposition process. Right now, this Dutch startup making mushroom coffins is planning to, I quote, convince policymakers to convert polluted areas into healthy forests with our bodies as nutrients. Oh, and it's worth mentioning that the cost of such a coffin is currently about $1,300. But that's because only 10 have been produced so far. Once they ramp up production, the price will drop significantly. And yes, I really like this concept. How about you? See you later.